live. Huzzah. Uh, Welcome, everyone, to ArCONa, to I believe, the last panel of the day. This is Bleed from Craft to Game and vice versa. If you're just tuning in, ArCONa benefits Bat Conservation International. I always want to read that as conversation. Bat conversation is a different thing. ArCONa benefits Bat Conservation International's mission to end bat extinctions worldwide, which is awesome because bats are awesome and we should preserve and love them. And bats are night pollinators, critical to our ecosystem. So please donate to support our fundraiser. I think the new goal is $3,000. So go in there and smash it. The donate link is in chat if you scroll down right below the window. It is also located below the stream. And here's a bat fact for you, that agave, which is used to create tequila, depends completely on night pollinators like bats. So we should love them, even though whether or not they are useful to us. But as it happens, agave is awesome and useful. And so if you need another excuse to support bat conservation, there you go. So in this panel, we will be talking about some of the ways that our gaming and our practice kind of intersect and bleed into each other, or perhaps the ways that we want to not let them bleed into each other. And so we'll be dealing with some heady questions and of that variety. I will be your moderator. My name is Dan Lehman Kennedy. My pronouns are he and him, and I am a sometime game designer, full-time dork. In my day job, I am an editor and instructional designer. So some of those things may also bleed. And I will now step back and allow our other panelists to introduce themselves. Next in line on my lineup is Kat. So Kat, go ahead.
Oh, hey everyone. My name's Kat Cool. My pronouns are she, they. I am a game designer and podcaster in the Chicago area, one of those horrible Chicago podcasters. You might know me from my work on the campaign podcast or Autonomic, or such games as Burn Bright on Roll20. Yep, that's me. Who's next on the list?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kat. TK, you're next in my lineup. Go ahead.
Hello, it's me. It's TK. Spooky Stories on the Internet. I also work for, well, I shouldn't say I also work for Roll20. I just work for Roll20. And then write like other stuff. So you've probably seen me as a professional dungeon master on some streams, as well as a member of the Indoor Recess crew, disastrously unfunny comedy Dungeons and Dragons players. And I also help write games. I don't know. Okay, that's all I really have right now. They, them.
Awesome. Thank you. Nikki.
Hi, I am Nikki Jeske. My pronouns are she, her. I am known on Twitter as Coyote Witch. I'm a freelance artist and I do a lot of D&D character portraits. And sometimes I do a lot of pet portraits too. And my favorite thing is when people have me draw their pets as D&D classes, which is a lot of fun. I'm hoping to get more into the tabletop and spread out from Dungeons and Dragons to other things and maybe work on a lot more art. But yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I'm going to dive right in with my first question. And these guys got a wall of text that I sent out in my question email. We may or may not get to all of these topics. I think that we will potentially have some branching conversations about this stuff, because there's a lot of places where there's a little off ramp that's going to be easy to take, and some of them I can see and some of them I will not be able to predict. And that is the beauty of this. So for our first question, the uh, the late Isaac Bonowitz, who was a neo-druid and an occultist, and also a tabletop game enthusiast, wrote a book. First edition appeared back in the 80s called Authentic Thaumaturgy, and then the second edition was released by Steve Jackson Games in the late 90s. And he wrote it as a way to apply real-world magical theory to tabletop RPGs. And it is a fascinating and sometimes head-scratching book. And if you really like Byzantine equations of how to calculate how much magical energy you need to do certain things, it's great. But there's also a bunch of kind of really thinky stuff in it. And the section on gods, he has the following. How many hit points does the angel Gabriel have? What are the psionic abilities of St. George? What were the wisdom stats of the Old Testament prophets? How many mana points did Mary need in order to perform her miracles at Lourdes and Fatima? Offensive questions? You bet. And they're just as offensive when they're asked or answered about figures from non-monotheistic religions. So the first question is, do you agree with Bonowitz's assertion? Does it upset or offend you to have real-world deities invoked in games? In the D&D Player's Handbook Appendix, there are real-world gods. If you play Scion, there are real-world gods. And do you draw a distinction between the gods presented in games and the beings that may happen to go by the same name in real-world faiths? So I'm going to try just kind of whoever wants to jump in on this, and we'll just make sure that everybody gets a chance to answer.
I guess I thought it was really fun thinking about the Bible as a giant book of tabletop campaigns. And it kind of
Incredible.
made me want to go back and read the whole thing all over again with that in mind. So I feel like I would probably get a lot more out of it. Like just imagining what the rules had to have been when Noah like suddenly knew. What is that? Insight, perception, nat 20 that. So I thought that led me to that thought, and I was just like, that's yeah. I don't know. It doesn't upset me at all to have real world gods or goddesses in games. I guess I feel like their faith comes first for me, and then whatever comes from that faith, it becomes real because of the faith. So like, I don't know, like the Greek gods were real to those people because they had a need to have faith in something. And so there was this higher being that they created. And I don't see, at least for me, how that's different than like just relating to a god within a campaign book. So I just feel like, at least for me, it's just woven all together. I don't have a problem with it.
TK, you got something?
I do, but I also have a tendency to steamroll in these panels, so I'm gonna go last.
Okay. I have a slightly different perspective because I'm coming from a different place. I should say right up front in the panel that I'm not a practicing witch. My main background is as a storyteller and folklorist, and then my family is a family of Ecuadorian shamans, and I am like displaced from that. I'm diaspora, but I grew up with a bunch of those practices, like just commonly in my household, and like I'm expected to do various things, right? So I have this spiritual background, but I would not consider myself in any capacity a witch. It's just I'm in this space. I think this is all very interesting, and it's very much a part of what I'm looking into as a folklorist, right? But approaching this through the lens of folklore, I care about the stories being told by people and who is being empowered by stories and by the telling of them. So to me, I'm like, generally there's a lot that I'm like, yeah, this is fun. And I think this is a cool way to discuss these stories. But then there are other types of sometimes when a god is depicted in a game, I'm like, oh, was that handled well? Who was telling the story for what purpose? Because sometimes it reeks of colonialism, settler colonialism, and I don't like it. For example, if I keep it squarely in my wheelhouse, if people just roll all over the Incan deities without knowing why they're doing it, I don't love it. I'd rather someone with a background in that culture do it for a reason. Ideally, it doesn't have to be that. There are lots of stories you could tell, but just statting them out with D&D stats so that people can fight them doesn't necessarily feel great to me.
Yeah, I would say the caveat to what I was saying is there has to be, and this goes for everything, there has to be that level of respect.
Yeah.
If you are playing with people that you know are not going to respect what you're bringing to the table, especially with something like that's so personal, I don't think it's the right environment to bring that. So while I don't have a problem per se of bringing things over, it definitely has to be with the right sort of people and the right levels of respect and understanding of those deities.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. If it's good faith portrayals to begin with, starting with a foundation of an assumption that this is done in good faith, then you don't have a problem with it. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Kat kind of said the magic word. You don't have to scratch this question very far before you meet our old friend colonialism. And that there is a difference between if it's coming from a known voices or if it's coming from somebody who's handling it with respect and gravitas for the source material. It's a different question, and it's kind of a different question if it's like, is it my tradition that is being gored or is it somebody else's? So but TK, like, fire your steamroller up.
It's like, sorry, and I already got started like halfway through that sentence too. No, I was like, I'm ready.
TK, do it. Activate.
Like, well, and it's like, am I wearing a shirt with a bunch of like Luciferian themes on it that are portrayed in a cartoonish manner? Yes, I am. Am I going to buy the book Sina Una, which has like a ton of like Filipino mythology or I shouldn't say mythology, a lot of those are living practices, but cosmology and folklore in it? Yes, I am. Do I think it was a good idea for Dungeons and Dragons to change the plain Beastlands to Beastlands from Happy Hunting Grounds? Yes, I do. It really depends on like who's writing it and who's getting the money, because boy, I don't have a problem with like walking into a Norse themed campaign written by people who are like Asatru and things like that, or Scandinavian, or you know what, even American, that like, you derive your like a lot of research and things like that from there. You did the research, you did a lot of work into this. So I don't have a problem with that. Do I love walking into like a Chultan campaign and meeting characters named like Nanny Poo Poo? Oh, I don't love that. Do I want to walk into Ravenloft, into the Sauron domain, and meet a voodoo priest named Chicken Bone? Oh, I don't want that. No. So like, heck it, let's fight Valkyries. I'm cool with it, but please put that same level of respect and intent and research into fighting somebody who's summoned a ton of zombies or whatever on earth they think that fantasy Caribbean areas have. So like, I'm very much like in the like, look, I know I'm wearing the sigil of Lucifer right here. I know I'm wearing a little cartoon devil on my chest. I'm not going to pretend like this isn't a living faith that I'm kind of wearing caricatures of. but they also designed it, so I'm kind of cool with it.
Yeah, when it comes from somebody who has that background, that level of respect and the foundation.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not taking it, you're supporting.
Plus, they're getting the money, which I love.
There's also just there's a whole axis of power here that needs to be discussed, right? That's just like the that you can take a few. There's been enough work done on different it's not hierarchies, but whatever, like there are
but like Mount
certain
Olympus can take it, right?
right, exactly.
You know?
Exactly, right. That like there are certain things in say the Hades game where I'm like, I actually don't love that portrayal of Medusa for a certain number of reasons, but you know what, it's fine, it's fine and fun, actually, that's fine.
Yeah. And Medusa has so many portrayals to pick from,
right, that it's like if I want the stuff I want, I can find it, so who cares?
Yeah,
it doesn't
People
have to
this
stand in
cute
for everything.
this cute one, right? Exactly.
Medusa has endless simps willing to write a good story for her.
Right.
Does Kuan Yin, does Yamaya?
Right.
No. It's like, you take what you get with those.
Yeah.
And Nikki, you brought up the point of like maybe it would be cool to like look at the Bible that way. There's sort of two responses to Bonowitz's assertion, like, well, I don't know that is offensive, that sounds awesome to me. And I footnoted in the questions that, like,
I mean, why not? Dante did.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly.
The Bible
Right,
can
exactly.
take
John
it.
Milton did.
Bible can take it, yeah.
And I had a footnote when I wrote this question and sent it out that at the time that Steve Jackson Games was publishing the second edition of Authentic Thaumaturgy, they were also the English language publisher of In Nomine, where you can look up the hit points of the angel Gabriel. and once again, like, Christianity can take it, and In Nomine is, even though it's not always respectful, it was kind of intended as a satirical take on Christian mythology. At the same time, it's like, there's always going to be somebody who's upset by it, but they can go ahead and be
and
upset.
a lot of
It's okay.
satirical takes on Christian mythology in fiction, in game writing, in movies, things like that. Those are also done by people who are going like through their own journey of processing their heritage with Christianity, heritage that they don't share with, say, Shintoism or something like that,
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, yeah, sure, I'll give you space to explore that.
Right. And there's a level of this, and I to come clean about some of my own perspective on this, like, there are some things that are not mine to have an opinion about. Like, I am in my own spiritual practice, Ganesh is a very important figure, but I'm always conscious, like, I'm not a Hindu, and so I'm looking at this from a very particular perspective. So, like, I can privately have an opinion about how that deity might be portrayed somewhere, but it's kind of like not my issue to raise in some ways, because I think like, I can't lay claim to an authenticity of kind of firsthand experience. I'm aware of the process of kind of crossing over cultures that has done before it got to me. So
I feel that also gives you an opportunity, like when anybody comes across that, it gives you an opportunity to find somebody who does have that right to say something, and then boost what they're saying.
Right. Exactly. So, it makes me that much more conscientious of, like, oh, you should listen to this person, because they're, they're coming from a firsthand perspective of this. So
I also feel like, in game, if somebody who brings something personal like that into a game, it allows the other people to have a new appreciation. Like you're teaching them something about what you love. And again, this has to do with what group you're with, and if you feel comfortable and safe enough to show that part of you. But I feel like it's a great way for people to learn. And I mean, I said thinking about the Bible like a campaign. That is, for me, that I'm not trying to be offensive. Like, that's a different perspective. And now I really do want to reread the Bible with that in mind and have this brand new perspective of something that other people love.
And the other thing that we sort of briefly skimmed a stone across is that, when you do your research and you look into this uh, from a respectful perspective, it opens up lots of doors to you. It becomes more interesting and fun than first assumptions that you might make from a kind of colonialist or an ignorant perspective. That in my long running D&D game that I run, one of our party cleric decided partway through that he was going to change his deity to Odin, and I thought that's awesome. And so, some of the research that I had previously done in Norse mythology kind of was able to really feed into that. And at one point, he was communing with his god, and one of my other players even kind of gave me a little ribbing, like, look how eager Dan is to play Odin. Come on, just let him do this.
That's
and I
really
got
cute.
and I got to do my sort of my off the cuff Havamal pastiche, and it was a lot of fun. It was more fun for me because I was able to just lean into that, like, Bale worker I am, and Glad of War, and Hung I 9 Nights on the Tree, and bring all of that kind of authentic stuff. And I think it made it better for everyone, or I hope it did. So, moving on to our next question, and this is kind of a branch off or a subset of the first question is, so what distinctions, if any, do you draw between your magical or spiritual practice, in whatever form that takes, for you, and the way the magical or otherworldly manifests in your games? Do you try to keep the feel of in-game magic different from what you understand about it in your practice? Obviously, those of you who are practitioners, or Kat, you can sort of look at this from a folklorist perspective, if you like, or does allowing that bleed help the in-game experience feel more real to you?
Kat, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, TK's hands up. I want to know
Oh,
why.
okay.
My hand is up for a completely unrelated reason.
Ah.
Is TK, there's something we need to resolve?
I had a follow-up question for your first question. Is his name really pronounced Bonowitz?
I went to the NPR story that was aired right after his death in 2010, and that was the way.
Wild. That was
Right.
not what I was reading. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Yeah.
That's all I had to say was that.
Assuming
like, is it really Bonowitz?
Assuming that the NPR reporter had the right end of that is Bonowitz. Yeah.
I'm not questioning you. I'm questioning his choice. Like, you could have just gone with it.
Yeah.
No,
Right?
you're an occultist and you chose Bonowitz. I'm sorry. Please.
He was a kind of a fascinating guy, apparently, and he was also, as much as he sort of raised this question of, like, if it's offensive to say about a monotheistic religion, it's offensive to say about a colonized religion, essentially. He was very irreverent about all kinds of stuff, and the sample thing that he put in sort of quasi adventure that is in authentic thaumaturgy is all about, like, the cult of coffee. So it's kind of hilarious.
He knew this would upset me personally.
He is laughing at you from wherever it is that he has passed into the mystery.
Rude.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry. Please, if you had answers for this, please say them. I'm leaving. Goodbye.
I can start this one, actually.
Awesome.
I do occasionally explore bits of my family's various practices in game, because Um, there are portions of them that I simply can't do, being physically distant from the land that we're located on. And it is a way for me to cathartically, you know, uh, like interact with my family. So that's something that I do after talking to people that I'm gaming with. Um, and sometimes I also, if I'm make games for entertainment, right? And if I am playing a spellcaster who is playing in the witch space in those games, will look at what that spellcaster's doing and like physically doing. And if the things that the game wants me to do, spellcraft wise, meshes up against those practices, I'll usually allow some amount of bleed to more easily discuss things that I would then want to discuss with the audience. So I sort of intentionally set up bleed there to make things more relatable to the audience, to be able to have certain types of conversations. Yeah. I'm way more interested. I went first because I'm way more interested in what you all do.
For me, there. So just a little background. I've been a practicing Green Witch for about 15, 16 years. And I discovered that at the same time that I discovered Dungeons and Dragons. So they basically evolved the same way for me. My very first tabletop character was a druid. And that was pretty much based entirely on what I was learning at the time. So I feel like there is the bleed is more like a waterfall effect of just everything is together. I'm currently playing a Circle of Spores druid who has the exact same beliefs as I do, and like in game has the exact same like meditation and rituals, and like so it's a lot of fun to put myself and my beliefs into the game because it just makes the character so much more personal to me. But then again, like I also play a whole bunch of barbarians. So that's I just it goes where it goes.
Awesome.
For me, the way like the root work in hoodoo and the way that I practice animism and stuff, that's my life and it's personal. And a lot of the practices for like my family and our like faiths and practices, those are all personal. So games are games and life is life. However, when I am designing settings, I will change things that are expected about those settings because I get, as you can imagine, I get tapped a lot for like, you know, jungle based societies that are either like Central American or African, Caribbean in theme. And so that I know that when these games go out on the shelves, when players are coming to them for the first time, I know exactly what they're expecting. And it is my job to make it more respectful and in a way that is reflective of what those people that it's based on are more like and what they might believe, but also in like a fantasy way. So like the issue is kind of twofold, where it's like, all right, it's not just fantasy because it's the Caribbean. It's not just fantasy because it's Asia, you know, and maybe your characters have never seen hot tea before or whatever, even though they have, because you live in a fantasy world where chainmail and plate mail are being sold for like the same price, which is absurd because in medieval times, chainmail would cost more than a house. But you know, whatever, we have guns and longbows, fine. But so it's like usually very like, okay, this is fantasy because it's fantasy, but it also has to be respectful, because when you do run into people who use like a magic system that's more flavored for this area, it's not just going to be nonsense. It's not just going to be loincloths and turbans. I can't. I'm so tired.
Yeah. TK, I'm so it's interesting to talk to, another person who's doing that work, right? So but so like I've written fantasy Ecuador, fantasy the Amazon, like whatever, how many times, right? And I've gotten to the point with doing it for where I'm like, I don't know that I can do this for spec anymore. Not for spec, for whatever, for contract work anymore.
Yeah.
Is like, right. There comes a point where then when I'm handing it off or whatever, where somebody's like, oh, why did you write it like this? And I'll talk about it, and I'll talk about my family, and I'll talk about different things that went into it, and then someone will be like, oh, and talk about how they're going to continue writing, and I'm like, never mind, give it back. I
Give
can't
it back.
I can't give
this is my child.
Yeah,
no, you're writing like Central America or something like that, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I love all of this. Where do we slot in the human sacrifice?
Yeah, and it's just like, no, never mind. I can't. So like I still write that stuff, but now I just write it for me, and I can't do it. Are you still doing it? How do you handle it? Because I've realized that it's that like writing it is, unless I'm doing it for me, there is like I guess a amount of investment or amount of bleed that where it is personal, and I just can't handle that. I can't handle the idea of somebody who it's not me, right? It's that it's somebody from the outside getting it wrong, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally get it. And it's like, how do you find the trust to put in those people?
Mm-hmm.
I am writing for people of color.
There you go.
Who are from
from
those specific
from the specific areas.
Yeah. And so they are looking over what I've written, and part of the reason why I'm writing it is because they can't write it themselves, or they wanted like a particular angle. So like I wrote like a sort of southern continent that does have a Mesoamerican and South American vibe to it. Mm-hmm. But what the big feature that we focused on for that area is the floating farms. Mm. There's a big volcanic lake, and there are floating farms that they grow like all of the nation's food from.
Cool.
And yeah. And so the big conflict from that empire doesn't come from them needing to do war or anything like that. The big conflict is they are so prosperous that they need more land for their people. Mm. And that means they have to encroach on other habitats and other places, and like try and farm them out. And we're trying to like, that's like the side story thing going on for the conflict for that area. Cool. And it's so much more interesting than human sacrifice.
Yeah, it's way better. Instantly way better.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Whenever the free RPG day adventure comes out, I'm just gonna whisper like a little friend DA right now. I wrote a free RPG adventure for somebody that I won't tell you who it is, but the adventure is that you're a reverse Indiana Jones.
Best premise.
It's the
best premise. I love doing that. Just return them.
You basically run into some people who took an artifact from a temple, and you have to go back to the temple and give it back.
Yeah, just give it back.
I like this.
That's what that free RPG thing is. And don't tell my boss, because I still want to work for them. And I'm so excited, and it's coming out this year. But yeah, I can't, it's so hard, and it's so heartbreaking to make a game where I'm like terrified that somebody is going to ruin something that means so much to me in my magical practice. Yeah. And I know in like 5 or 10 more years, it's probably going to be fine. But like right now, I'm still very nervous.
Yeah.
Very nervous.
TK and Kat both brought up that this idea that sometimes what makes the difference is how personal it is, and how vulnerable you can be in that, and that there are places where it seems like it's important to keep up the wall, and it's like I can't put this on the table. And then there are places where it doesn't matter as much, but in some ways the that really central raw stuff can be very difficult to um, not even necessarily because it's a game, but because it's social and because you're sharing it either with the other people at the table, or with the other people that you collaborate with, or with the world when you put it out as something that then people can get a hold of and mess with. So
I do love the idea of exploring like personal faith through your player character though, and I might try something similar to that. I'm playing a Horizon Walker Ranger in the in my like current streamed game, and I might try with like, because my personal faith falls so much on ancestor worship. I like the idea of them, like, since they can like travel between planes or like sea portals and stuff, it would be really interesting to see how they dealt with like ancestor worship in a way like that. But I don't know, we'll have to see. We'll see how it goes.
Oh,
We'll give it a
that's-
shot.
yeah. Give us
I'm
on the
nervous.
panel an update if you ever do it. That's
Okay,
okay.
and I think a lot of it also seems to come down to how does the game handle these things, and is there a compatibility? And I'm if I play a lot of casters in D&D, and they but I'm pretty firmly within D&D Magic's paradigm there, and there's not a lot of space to incorporate my kind of weird postmodern syncretic um, uh, 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 perspective on things. Whereas if I'm playing mage, that is what it's about, right? So it
Oh, you know what? I guess I never thought about that because I have played Mage the Ascension, and I have flavored my mage very similar to like my personal beliefs.
so
Hmm.
yeah, it's
Without even realizing it.
Hmm. And maybe it's because like in mage, magic doesn't always have to be so combative, but like with
right.
Dungeons and Dragons, I'm like so scared of being vulnerable with my characters. So let's see if I open myself up to emotional vulnerability.
I feel like that kind of goes back to what you had asked about authenticity, like
Yeah.
in the way that magic is presented. And I was thinking about that, and I feel like it's, I mean, for me, authenticity is kind of subjective
Right.
because everyone has different
Great point. Yeah.
authentic parts of themselves. So I feel like even if you go into a game and it has a magic system that you don't really connect with, it's probably connecting to somebody else.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just this, I don't know how to answer that, because I feel like there is no authenticity in in role playing games, but at the same time it's all authenticity.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because you can have authenticity in its, and like look at it and be like, well, this is just a power fantasy. Well, why does it make that person feel powerful?
Right. Right. Why is there a need for that power fantasy?
Yeah.
Right? As the
What made them feel powerless to begin
right.
with?
The as in his essay, A Few Notes on the Culture, Ian Banks talked about, yes, this is wish fulfillment. The fulfillment of wishes is one of the goals of civilization, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, for me, barbarians are wish fulfillment. Like
Right.
in real life, I have mobility issues and
Mhm.
arthritis, so it makes it really hard for me to do things like I can't run. But my
right.
barbarians are really into running, and
For
I play
sure.
a gnome barbarian that has like 55 movement speed because she is just fast. That is wish fulfillment.
Right. Right.
Very happy with that character.
Imagine if my anger was potent. Imagine if all of the things that make me angry gave me
Yeah.
superpowers.
Like to
How awesome is that? So going to drill down just a little bit more from the previous question and say, so are the specific tools and symbols of your practice fair game, so to speak, in your world building or your gameplay, or how much do you consider it disrespectful or maybe even dangerous to treat them as toys? And where do you draw the line if it is some but not others? I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit um, in some of the answers to the previous question, but if you have further thoughts on this and sort of leads to would you use a tarot deck or another divinatory device from your practice as a plot generator or randomizer in your game? You know, the previous panel had people talking very eloquently about how much they love the idea of using tarot in gameplay, and so
really
here's a chance to sort of jump off of that as well.
Well, I have a general rule that anything that could have real world consequences should not belong in the game. So spells, no. Certain rituals, no. So it's definitely some, but not others.
Yeah,
I don't know.
agree.
For me, tarot is both very personal, but also very, very like everybody can do it. It's
Right.
it's literally an open book sometimes for people, and there is a cat.
This is
I'm
Crow.
ready. I'm ready for this cat.
Mhm.
Let me see.
So
Like to see
it
everyone?
totally
Oh
depends.
my gosh, I love them.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's a little athlete.
I love
So
her.
cute.
Mhm.
Oh my
You
God,
want to
I
come
forgot what I
live
was
with me,
saying.
Crow?
Crow, you can't
Come
be the
live in
star
my
of the
house?
panel right now.
You want to live under my bed and eat ham sandwiches, Crow?
Oh,
Come
Yeah.
on.
all right,
She's
Like
just
ham
gonna
sandwich?
scramble
this is
away.
now the crow panel.
Everyone,
I
this
love
is
her.
Crow.
Crow,
I
oh
love
my
her.
goodness.
I love her already.
uh, we should get back to tarot.
What did I say? Something about tarot.
Literally an open book.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying before, that it's all about the respect that people have in the group. Like, I'm not going to bring tarot to a group that thinks magic is funny, like,
Right.
or doesn't take it seriously. And I feel like personally, I would more likely use like an oracle deck in games,
Yeah.
because that's a really great like jumping off point for stories. Whereas I feel like tarot, when I'm doing it, it's such a personal, like, I'm I'm asking questions about me, and I don't always want people to know the answer. I don't want other people to look at it. So that's very much a me thing. But I loved that panel about tarot because it really made me think about certain things that I hadn't thought of before in game. So like tarot that was made specifically for games, that's awesome. I want to get some of those decks. But yeah, again, it's like the respect that other people. Crow says we all have to pay attention to Crow now.
Surprise, surprise.
It's an eternal witch struggle.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything that has real world consequences do not belong in games. Like, don't bring a Ouija board in the game.
I think
Not something to play with.
You know, my own answer to that is similar in some ways. Like, I might use a tarot deck in a game, but not my deck.
Yeah,
You know, not
yeah.
like the
Yeah.
Robin Hood, the Robin Wood deck that I imprinted on 20 years ago, and
Yeah.
that has sort of, you know, infused with all of my personal energy. But you know, one
I
one
think
that I
I'd
just
bring
got
out like
for that.
a deck specifically for games.
Right.
For me, I am not. I scry for divinatory practices. My tarot deck is personal. I don't put a lot into it or anything. And so I'm genuinely afraid that I would make my deck mad at me by doing that. It's like, oh, you can bring me out for Dungeons and Dragons night, but you can't bring me out for a daily reading.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I'll just go back in the drawer for 2 more months. It's okay. I'm not mad.
I feel the exact same way because I have several different decks and each one has its own personality.
Yes.
The one I use the most is actually my Crow deck, which is kind of funny right now.
Sorry.
But I do see like religious and magical symbolism that's like for real living practices a lot in games. Like I have seen games that have incorporated vote vevs, and I'm just
Hmm.
like, why?
Yeah,
Do
why?
you know? You don't know what this is. The thing is that the magic is actually trapped in making it. Like mandalas, it's like the magic is all in. Well, I guess people who use mandalas might not refer to them as magic, but the power is trapped in like the making of it and stuff. And they intentionally leave certain like lines and stuff out of vevs to begin with, because like you have to go through like the whole ritual of it and stuff. And so if you get like things like that in books and thrown around willy-nilly, we also get issues of people putting them on their body like tattoos. It's like, excellent, have fun trapping a loa inside your skin. I hope you're happy. Stop it. Stop.
Yeah. If
But
you don't know what you're doing, do not
Yeah.
play with things.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I do love the idea of using like an oracle deck or something, just because like oracle decks are like so. And you know what? I have a Taroka deck. I'd probably use a Taroka deck to scry. Just like, yeah, sure, okay. I just like the scrying. I just like the imagery and how it resonates with me. I very rarely use a book to tell me what it means, just because I'm lazy. So I'll use like a Taroka deck to scry, and I would probably use it in game, but I wouldn't use the same Taroka deck.
Yeah.
Kat, I know you're not a practitioner as such, but I would love to hear any thoughts that you may have on this as well.
I love the form. The form of tarot is something that I love so much more than tarot itself. I think it's beautiful, intricately done, a fascinating thing from a game perspective. What I imagine you all are calling oracle cards are they a specific thing?
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
okay.
there are several different. Well, there's probably dozens of different.
Yeah, there's like angel oracle, fairy oracle. They're essentially
okay.
cards that don't as much follow like a major and minor. They fall outside of the Rider Waite
Okay.
categorization of cards.
Yeah, I had my oracle deck over here.
Well, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But two things like came to mind immediately. One, the first thing that I ever scryed on as a kid was the Clo card set of cards from Card Captor.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Yeah. Two, like in making a game for myself with my friend, that's incorporating both of our cultures. He's Indian, I'm Ecuadorian. We mash these things together. Tarot is actually very important to my family. Like we were looking at various things that we wanted to do and different games that we liked. And we knew we wanted some card draw element, so we figured we would just redo this because we weren't using straight up tarot. No way. So this game is called Autonomic, and it deals with a reincarnation cycle of children. And we have 50 plus kids, so we figured we'd have one card represent every child, and each of these have a series of meanings representative in the world. So you pick the cards, and it has, unlike many things that we have encountered in games that do something similar, an actual face up and face down mechanic that gives different meanings to how you interact with things and your complications on rolls. So this is like the secondary element beyond a pass fail. So I clearly think it's very interesting to include things like this, but I'm not interested in just doing straight up tarot. I don't want to interact with the established themes of that. I love these themes actually. I have decks. I use them. But I don't want to straight up use that in my gameplay.
We're at about the 10-minute mark, so very quickly, I want to make sure that we just touch on. We can go really quickly through this, but just to reverse the mirror a little bit, are there things from games that have crept their way into your practice. TK touched on this very briefly with like that they might use a Taraka deck for oracular purposes. So if there's anything else like that, or um, if there is, if you are like me, kind of a postmodern, have that kind of perspective on what a god is, have powers from the worlds of gaming crept their way into the way you think about your spiritual practice.
I'm an animist, so I don't revere like a deity or anything. I do revere ancestors and Orisha, who for Ifa animists, we consider Orisha to be revered ancestors. They're just like ancestors that were so heroic or incredible that they came to embody an entire ideal. They're somebody's ancestors, we just don't know whose yet, so they've come to represent us as a whole. So there's like, if there is a god, he's, for us, if there is like a god, like an all father type god or an all creator type god, they love us but are not invested in our well-being. So they don't hate us, but they also don't care if we live or die. And so with a god, or like I saw the question that you sent involved like building an altar to like Timora or something like that. Probably not. I tend to we more revere actual like qualities for things like that. We might have like, like a money tree or like a hand of fortune if we want. We're kind of like make your own magic type people. But yeah, like the Taroka card, probably because it's more of the ritual of it, right, that I like. And and a lot of things that go into game are based on real world practices anyway,
right,
and how people resonate with the world and how it resonates with them. So if you can just like finding a fictional version of something that maybe belongs to a faith that you should stay in your lane for might resonate with you in a way that's not as messed up as buying out all the sage. So like,
yeah,
if somebody's like, people in this land burn bay leaves or something for fortune and to clean out all this stuff, it's like, well, technically bay leaves are for good fortune. Why not bundle them up and just like smudge with them or something? Like, it might not be so bad. So if it's something like that where it's like been put in the book out of good faith or something, or like Stephanie Rosebird, who wrote Stick, Stones, Roots, and Bones, she advises making parchment out of banana leaves to make it like not don't make it out of animals, and if I saw that in a game before I saw that in Stephanie Rosebird's book, I'd probably still give it a shot.
Yeah, I actually looked that book up when you mentioned it in an earlier panel, and it looks really interesting.
It's a good book. It's hoodoo from the perception of a person who practiced Wicca first. So wow, it's like, it's very accessible for people who are just getting into really hoodoo. Cool. Yeah.
I guess for me, this goes back to what I was saying before. I found witchcraft and Dungeons and Dragons at the same time. So there's definitely a lot of inspiration that I got from like reading about druids in game that resonated with me outside of the game. And again, I don't see personally much of a difference between taking a deity from a game and setting up something for them if you really, really feel a connection with them. There's not much of a difference between doing that and reading a book about Greek mythology and having something really resonate with you for that. So right. I guess two of the one deity in Forgotten Realms that really resonated with me at the time and kind of shaped a lot of what the creeds I follow, I guess, is Myliki. and she just like she's nature and
Who is
unicorn.
also derived from an actual Finnish deity, I believe. So,
Yeah. So
and I don't
yeah.
know how much gap there is between
hmm
the Finnish paganism and how Myaliki is portrayed in the realms.
Yeah. So it's
Finnish
like
cosmology is
yeah.
incredible. I love it.
So much of the games are inspired by things in real life.
Right.
So there's not much of a difference from, seeing that part of a god that you really, really like.
Right.
I think it also brings you to an extent you have the opportunity to explore more about what that god was inspired by.
Right.
There's this whole bunch of layers that you can deep dive into.
Uh, Kat,
Yeah.
and we're down
Yeah,
to
no, I have something for this from folklore stuff. So I I don't have anything from a practice standpoint. However, I take stuff from fiction and apply it to real life all the time. And as a kid, I used to like celebrate characters' birthdays. And something that I did once in high school, we had these like these days. I went to a very small school, and for your senior year, you were like given a day where you were allowed to talk to the entire student body about one pointless thing that you wanted to talk about. So I very much like was the embodiment of fuck this post and happy birthday Sonic. I threw Remus Lupin a birthday party and made cake for the entire school, and told this story about how I celebrated Midsummer because I like read about the holiday in a book, and not like I mean Midsummer the British holiday, like that incarnation
Yeah.
of it, and with hiding gifts for fairies, and how my parents refused to celebrate it and indulge me in that, but my brother got really excited. He's much younger than me, so I like woke up at like 4 a.m. and hid a gift for him. So he like woke up and found that and was excited, and I was like bawling my eyes out. And so I gave this little speech to the school about the importance of allowing yourselves to experience fiction on your own terms and applying that to community and to each other, and finding whatever the meaning of these things is for you, and the sort of connections we make with each other, and like what holidays are. And I think that applies to many categories of life. I really, really love holidays. I think they're cool and they serve a lot of functions. And one of those functions is ritual. So bringing that further out to practice, this stuff is whatever you're putting into it. It doesn't matter where you're getting it from. All it matters is what it means to you. And in some cases, depending on the practice, what it means to your community. So that's how I feel about it. I feel very strongly.
thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the answers that you've given to this and to the other questions that we've had time to consider. Our time is up. I could talk about this for another hour, and you guys have been a delight. So thank you. Thank you so much. Let's do a brief roundtable of everybody with your with your deets, where to find you on the internet should you wish to be found. Let's go in reverse order. Start with Nikki.
Hi. You can actually find me mostly on Twitter as Coyote Witch. I also have a website, nikkijeski.com, and that basically is just a link to everything that I'm on. But mostly Twitter. That's where I live. That's my home.
TK, back in the middle.
No, it me.
Three-person panel. That's
It's me. It's me. It's TK. I write spooky stories on the internet. If you like spooky stories, then you should read them at tkjwrites.com, or you can follow me on Twitter. TK joins the fray. I stream a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I stream a lot of silly games. You can find me every Tuesday night. Over on the twitch.tv/D&D channel, streaming for Roll20, Generation Fantasy is what we're playing right now, which is about a group of young teenagers who find out that their small town of Jenkins, Nebraska, got sucked into a magical world 18 years ago, and no one told them.
Hey.
Awesome.
Sounds like fun.
Fantastic. Kat.
Yeah, the easiest place to find me is over on Twitter at cat_cool_ with cool spelled like my last name, KUHL. And you could also find my podcast Autonomic, the current one Autonomic, over at autonomicpodcast.com, with autonomic spelled like the nervous system. So, me.
Fantastic. Thank you. I am Dan Lehman Kennedy. I am a second level bard on the Tweety. You can look up my name on the DMs Guild to find my small collection of releases, which I hope to grow in this year and the time to come. Thank you all for being fantastic panelists today. Thank you, Lisa, for setting up this convention. This has been a blast to watch and to participate in. Everybody who is watching, smash that donate button, give to the bats,
Yes.
and we will see you around.